Hi friends! Welcome to another eyeshadow tutorial family. This was particularly inspired by the upcoming Natasha Denona Pastel Palette. I believe that is scheduled to be released sometime in April. Correct me down below. And when there are new releases upon the horizon, I then go back into my drawer and I see, wow, what can we use as similar? You know, while we're waiting for the newness, why don't we jump into a palette that I thought of right away? And that is Natasha Denona Triochrome palette. I had already done a review on this, and I think I might have done a separate 3-look video, maybe. I could be a liar. Briefly, upon seeing the pastel palette online, I immediately thought it's sitting between Circo Loco and Triochrome. Triochrome, I feel, is the muted version of a pastel palette, although it contains light shades. Some of them are a little more vibrant than your typical pastel, and I would say maybe a little more muted than the vibrant shades found in Circo Loco. That palette definitely has more of a punch and impact, a robust serving of different shades, of different textures. And the pastel palette, I think, you know, if you weren't into Triochrome, into Circo Loco, then the lighter pastel colors could be a thing. I did not see all the shades. I don't think there are a lot of neutrals in there. So if you're not into color, perhaps this wouldn't be for you. And even though pastels are lighter in shade and in saturation, it could definitely bring a look. Even though they're lighter shades, they might look very bright on the eyes, especially depending on your skin tone. I just hit my elbows on my armrests. All that to say, I was inspired to hop back into Triochrome, and if you happen to have the same palette, well, grab it. Let's do some eyeshadow. If you have similar shades, I inspire you to join along as well. If you are into singles and you've seen the shades in Triochrome and you have already created a palette that has a similar feel, then get it going. Especially with the so-called Triochromes that a lot of indie lovers scoffed at, because yes, they don't have the same extravagance as the likes of Cleona, Terra Moon. What else? There are a lot of other indie brands that have exquisitely formulated triochromes that just give you all 3 colors. These are a little weaker. I do think they have a place in this niche of a brand in terms of it being presented to a wider consumer base, right? I don't think everyone's going to go for the Cleona, right? That's definitely more of a niche consumer demographic. Natasha Denona reaches a lot more people, and these kind of like watered down triochromes maybe more appropriate for those who want to experiment with the Triochrome thing, but they don't want to fully commit. That's just my hypothesis. With all that out the way, why don't you come in a little closer? That's enough. It will be a grand idea for me to prep my lids, excuse me. Before we roll in terms of strategy, I will apply the same principles I did to Safari, which I have a tutorial on my channel presenting 6 looks using that palette. I feel the best way to get the most out of the shades here is to juxtapose them, color block them, as opposed to blending them together. I know we love to blend, we love to swirl and twirl, but when it comes to these shades, I think they are best presented, again, when they're layered in a way that they can maintain the integrity of the actual shade, even still next to another. I think that further amplifies the type of color, and it also delivers a beautiful gradation of color on the lids. Instead of trying to blend, I think we should pat down, also taking advantage of single eyeshadow looks. For instance, these lighter washes of color you can place all over the lid, and maybe take one of the metallic shades over the lid just to add a little bit more of like that Triochrome look. And this setup is unlike anything that Natasha has done prior, in that yes, her eyeshadow palettes are always designed as a matrix where no matter what row, column, or quad, trio, duo you encounter, it is an eyeshadow look. But this is the first time we have the same finish in one column, and then you have on the flanks just the matte shades. But you could also see here down the center, you have all the green-like colors here on the top, the purple-violet colors the center, and more like the coral, muted tangerine beiges here on the bottom. So it is organized in a way that I feel makes it accessible to use. You don't have to think about which color to pair with what. If you wanted to keep it strictly green, then you just stick to this row here. If you wanted to hop around, you could. And I want to do that on purpose. So for instance, we could just do this quad here. So this is more like a muted purple, muted tangerine, and the lighter shades here. And if we wanted to just stick with that quad, well, I would start off with Manganese right off the bat. And this is a Houkodou, I believe it's a Canadian squirrel brush. It's a fluffy shader, as you know I love. Will pick up nice color, but also has the fluffy tips. And up close, you can see again the flat side, but from the top, you have a really nice fluffy tip here that can serve as an incredible blender without actually having to switch brushes. So this makes it a 2-for-1, if you will. And as I mentioned before in my Safari palette video, I think it very helpful, especially with the darker shades, to tap them on first so they are in contact first layer with your primer and will have the most stick. And I'm pulling it down here from the crease onto the lid, keeping it fairly low as I want to dedicate another lighter shade to blend the edges. Taking my Angie and BK Beauty collab brush, this is in A502, tapping into Naga, and just at the very edges. So you see, Naga packs a punch. Is actually quite opaque for a light shade, which is why I would recommend you, well, you know, actually, you could have gone in with Naga first through the crease if you wanted, and then Manganese after, but this works too. We could always go back with Manganese if you like, but I wanted to use Naga as a means to create that gradation. And it's actually quite powdery, so you might have to find yourself tapping in Manganese again. And I'm taking a little more with my same flat shader and fluffing that color through the crease. Taking it out a little bit beyond my lash point, as that's my preferred way to blend shadow. You could keep it tighter towards the lash line if you want it to be rounder and not travel out as far. And I'm still now with Naga refining this blend, you know, because I can never get it right, okay? I have my concealer brush on standby, not with additional product, but what's ever left on the bristles, I gently pat here on the bottom. So you see, that just cleans it up a little bit. It's your personal eraser, okay? We could do two things. We could follow through with Manganese and place it all over the lid. Maybe head over to Kinetic and apply it over. Or we could go in with Plutonium. I think this will be a really nice pairing. As I had mentioned before, color blocking is a nice technique to rely on when using the Triochrome palette. So tapping into Plutonium, excuse me, and I'm tapping that on the lid. It's up to you as to how far you want to take Manganese. If you want Plutonium to be a prominent inner lid color, if you want to do half and half, maybe you do Manganese on the brackets, outer and inner brackets of your lid. Create a halo eye, but with matte colors. So possibilities are endless here. And I think it's quite fun to just play with the different techniques that we usually rely on for shadow, but when it comes to just dealing with one medium, with one finish, in this case, a matte, is interesting to see how the look will turn out, you know? I'm still taking Manganese here through the crease predominantly. I think that's a really nice color to have on the outer lid and through the crease, using Naga to just blur the edges here a bit. And Plutonium looks fantastic here on the inner part of the lid. If you wanted, you can apply even more primer just to reinforce the longevity and color richness that you will receive from that step. Vertex it's like an off-white matte. I think suitable for inner corner highlight, definitely with the colors presented here. We don't have a shiny metallic to use as an inner corner highlight. So you could definitely use Vertex to pop on the inner corner as a highlight moment if you wanted, or you could just take Plutonium all the way through. I think nice to take Naga, that light lavender shade that we placed on the edges of Manganese, to now place it on the inner lower lash line. That's a nice region to place a color here. You could also do it on in the corner if you wanted to change it up. And to finish the look, I am placing Manganese on the majority of the lower lash line here to connect with what's happening up top, rounding through the edges. Now there is some inconsistency here, as you see. If you want, you can tap on more of the Manganese to ensure that it looks even, rounding the corners, just finishing that off. Different possibilities. If you wanted, you can take Kinetic and place it over Manganese, but you know what? I'm actually going to stick to this. I'm going to keep it just as it is because I like how that looks. A far simpler approach, maybe just take one matte. I'm taking Tungsten here, just do the crease, fluff it up, setting up the look. This is my Chikuhodo blender. Believe it's the Z Series 11. It's a very soft brush. I usually don't like to use this brush with Natasha Denona mattes found in her later palettes because they pack quite a punch, but this matte actually is faring very well with this bristle type, so we're doing good. You could take a little bit of Redox and just feather the edges of Tungsten. I think that's a really nice gradient. Again, when you place the medium or deeper shade first, you could use the lighter shade to create that gradation of color. And now we can go in with Kinetic. I'm actually using my finger here and placing Kinetic right where there is no shadow. So basically the majority of the lid and some on the inner corner. Now, despite these Triochromes not being particularly dazzling, the texture is quite nice, very easy to apply. So when it comes to the actual metallic formula, it's quite smooth, very easy to apply, has nice consistency when placed on the lid, and I think it a friendly formula with multiple brush types. Okay, why not? You could use Naga here since we're in this row still to be your highlighter or inner corner highlighter of choice. Yeah, if you wanted to flip it, why not? We can do Plutonium here on the center of the lower lash line. Now this might be an odd placement of color. Usually I reserve this portion of my eye for, you know, like a Pat McGrath astral shade or like a really shiny metallic, but to have this muted tangerine right smack in the middle of my lower lash line, it's a surprise, you know, it's something different. Tungsten here, now bracketing Plutonium. I'm taking that on the outer and inner portion of my lower lash line, slightly overlapping Plutonium. Also, a little bit of Naga, but still making it the prominent highlighter shade here. And these colors, I think you can make really hazy. So you could bring it down, and since they're not so punchy, you could be a little more reckless in their placement. And I think that approach will serve the look very well. I'm just going back to this eye because, you know, I gotta, just a little more blending. Just a little more blending. Better. All right. Let's pop on some lashes and I'll be right back. And here is the finished look with round number 1. I like how we dedicated one eye to all matte and then introduced one of the metallic shades on the second look. It just shows that with a little bit of patience and strategy, I think you can create really nice, I feel daily friendly in terms of the vibrancy. It's not, yes, it's colorful, but so not in your face, and I think very much wearable for multiple occasions, different parts of the day. I think perhaps depending on your workspace, sure, maybe you have to be a little more careful, but I think that has changed for most people. A lot who work in conservative environments still find themselves not wearing just brown, black shadow, beige, neutral this, whatever. They are now introducing a little more color, and I think Triochrome has those opportunities, and we will now explore, I think in the second round, the greens here, and also the bottom row, which with Garmon and Diatonic, you can probably get away with a more conservative work environment look, but like Scrap, that's like more of like an olive. So, you know, we're gonna get into it. Have a look here. How do we do in the first round? All right, fam. Let me take this off and I'll see you back here in a moment. Just to let you know, I apologize for not mentioning this at the start of the video. I have my lights on because it's a snowy, cloudy day, and if I solely relied on my natural light, I would have looked a little gray and sad. I always like to film in natural light because I do think that best presents the actual colors look from your end, but you know, we had to put the glam core on, fam. I'm so sorry. Hopping in to the greens. Now, let's say you wanted to just do the metallic, okay? We'll go into Scarab. Simplest approach by far. I'm taking Scarab with my finger and I'm tapping that right at the center of my mobile lid, and I use my fingers just to feather the edges, and you see it's like more of like a mound. It's not a, I guess you could describe this as a semicircle. We're not worried about finishing the edges just yet. We're placing the color on there first. Out of the three, I do think Scarab is the prettiest Triochrome. You can see a more prominent shift as opposed to the others. I can argue Color Flip got a little something too, but Scarab I think is my favorite out of the three. Now we can go in with Ion or Vert. We could do a Scrap, you know, let's do Scrap. Taking my AngieBk Beauty brush again, and I'm just tapping Scrap here on the outer portion of my lid as well as the inner. Not so much for it to be the inner corner color for this look. I will then apply either Andradite, probably Andradite since it's the lightest green. You know, I would say this is more of a mint. I have a brush on standby. You know, Scrap fell a little bit on my lower inner under eye. It's all good though, it's fine. It's fine. If you want to avoid that altogether, then just do your eyes first and then face makeup afterwards. After we dab scrapped on the outer and inner portions of our lid, you can then now take that color through your crease. You don't have to worry about so much swirl and twirl because you have both ends. It's just a matter of connecting them now. And when doing so, be sure to hold your brush at the tail end of its handle to apply the right amount of pressure in order to blend, but not so much to move your skin around. That's going to lead to skippity skips, okay? We don't want that. Vert perhaps can be a nice transition color here. If you wanted to add one more shade, and in this case, I'm applying Vert on the edges of Scrap to create just a lighter gradation, right? You don't want Scrap, or you could just have Scrap stop on its own. I would then use a bigger brush to still blur the edges, or maybe use a pressed powder or even loose powder just to finish the blend for that shade. But if you have a 15 pan palette, in this case we want to use as many shades as possible. All right, it's looking nice. Now with Andradite, this is the inner corner highlight of choice. You see it packs a mighty punch, so take a little and then build on it accordingly. I like to spread it not only on the upper part of the inner corner but also the lower. I think this is where we can take Ion. This is more of like an acid green shade with my blender here, and I'm using this color to create a more prominent haze. As you see, it's not showing up like Scrap is, so I would probably use this maybe to blend the edges of Scrap. In fact, I'm going to take that color and mimic what's going on the lid, meaning placing that shade on the outer and inner corner of my eye, and then I'll take Scarab right smack in the center, and this will be our showstopper moment. You know, we got it going on center of the lid, now we got going on center of the lower lash line, layered on top of Ion, which I think a really nice touch. I would toy with the idea, maybe use an eye primer that's lighter than your lid shade and place the primer on your lower lash line. That's going to help amplify Ion's color a little bit more, so it doesn't look as yellow on you as it does on me, because I guess depending on your skin tone will determine how it will appear, but you can definitely manipulate how it appears by using a different primer, right? So that's probably something I would consider doing in the future when attempting this look again, when I'm using Ion, just to get a little more bang out of my buck. But that doesn't look too bad. I like what's happening. Okay. Just to finish the edges of Scarab, I'm taking a shader brush and using the tip of it to carve right under the, not quite under the crease, but just a touch over that line a little bit. Now, if we wanted to get a little crazy, maybe we can use Ion as the main stage shade. I'm placing this now on the lid, so I'm taking a totally different route here, and as you see, it's a little weak on its own. And again, I would then use another primer, something lighter than my lid, so it can bump up the color, like that chartreuse tone to it, which I absolutely love. But for it to truly show as that chartreuse color, I will have to then apply a much lighter eye primer. Let's take Vert, why not? Not too sure how that will look, but kind of just disappears on top of Ion. So what I would do actually, because I want to dedicate Scrap as the smoky liner here, so I'm using my Rephr number 3, my trusted number 3, to start carving out a liner here. I'm not doing a very good job. I made it way too thick, but it's okay. You know what? We're gonna salvage this. Did I do it? Did I mess it up? I mean, it could be better, but whatever. Lots of times when I run into this issue, I use my concealer to clean up under the wing liner. Now, I always love to nail it on the first time. I don't need any assists, okay? But sometimes you do. And I think the easiest remedy is to use your concealer, and after you have finished carving out your wing liner, to clean up the base of it is the best route to go in order to present a much sharper line, and also to clean up underneath, right? Because if you find that the angle is a little off, this allows you to adjust it a bit so it doesn't look curved or what have you. If again it looks uneven on the bottom, you could adjust that by again making sure you use the concealer to clean that up. And I'm now using Vert. I realize, you know, I'm talking a lot. I have to tweeze the hairs on this portion of my brow bone because I don't think it allows for the smoothest blend to happen. Because of that, I'm not crazy about how Vert is looking on this part of my brow. It looks a little uneven. And now I'm just tapping with my concealer brush, perhaps to just lessen that a little bit. Taking Scarab right just straight across the lower lash line. You know, is when all else fails, just put on Scarab, okay? And once again, relying on Andradite as our inner corner highlight. Looking at this now, I feel I would have liked it better if maybe I combined these shades, you know, relying on my color blocking technique instead of putting them together, it's not terrible, but I definitely like my first round better. Although I understand maybe now doing this, I rather mix the greens on their own or rely on Scarab as my main stage lid shade, because the lighter greens on their own I feel will appear better if I had a different primer. But for now though, it's okay. All right, slapping on lashes and I'll be right back. Round 2, using mostly the greens. Not my most favorite demo. I could have done better for sure. I just wanted to devote solely to using the greens, figuring out how we can get the most. For instance, if this was a 5-pan palette, these were the only colors we had, what could we do? Not bad, right? Again, going back to my own critique, I think using another primer will better amplify these shades, will just present them in a far better light than me using my Viseart primer, which is great if it's just another color, maybe not like chartreuse, okay? By far my most favorite go-to is combining Scarab, the Triochrome here, and Scrap on the outer inner corners. That would be my go-to look for this row. Although I do want to play with Ion and Vert again. I think they are unique shades, not to the whole color spectrum, but unique in this palette, and I could definitely get a little more out of them. So maybe I'll do another tutorial, let me know. Or if you had run into the same challenges, let me know what your favorite primer is to use with these shades. I would love to know. With that said, I think it is time to get into the final demo, mostly hitting the last row, seeing what we can get from that. But we gotta take these lashes off first. Be back in a bit. Ooh, we gotta get rolling. The sun's starting to do funny things. Okay, Garmon. Immediately I recognize this color to be, for my skin tone, the go-to everyday slap-on shade. What does that mean? If I don't have time to think and I have this palette and I just need something on my crease, this is what I'm gonna go to. It doesn't have too much color, but not too little. It adds a little something to the crease, give it a little life, okay? Lashes or mascara, be done. You could probably go in with Diatonic and place this on the lid for a softer, peachy looking lid. That's a nice pairing, right? Again, offering some color, not too much. You want to fluff out Garmon, you can. And once again, it's always this side. I could never get the blend right. If you wanted to use Plutonium as a crease shade, that would be an interesting first step to take. I'll have my same brush here that I used for the first eye, fluff Plutonium through the crease. I understand I'm staying within this row. I am thinking of venturing off a little bit for this last round, but I do love Plutonium through the crease. It has some warmth to it. It's not quite the same as Carnelian and that other warm orange yellow leaning shade in Sunrise. This is more muted. I like it though. It's not too much, you know what I'm saying? This I feel would be an interesting opportunity to bring in Ion. I am hopping I'm hopping back up. Again, layering these colors in a way that I feel makes the final product more interesting, right? Instead of staying within the same monochromatic row, you can definitely see now Ion a little bit more, despite me not changing the primer I used, because it is placed next to Plutonium. The more orange tone brings the Ion shade more forward. And I'm gonna go a little crazy, okay? Color flip, not as the main stage lid shade, but I'm using that as the outer corner shade. Whoa. Color flip is, I think, like the magenta and green shifting combination is really nice to have, not only across the lid, but also as the outer corner and crease shade. And next to Plutonium, I think that's a nice combination. It's unexpected, you know? And I'm still tapping on Ion because when layering colors and combining them in this way, it's best to reintroduce them if you find that stuff got lost in the blending mix. Back to this eye, as simple as you can take it. Garmon, lid, crease, or just crease. We took Diatonic on the lid. If you want, you could take Plutonium on the inner part of the lid here to kind of fluff in a little bit of warmth. You could also take it on the lower lash line. If you wanted to change your mind completely, then just take color flip. Or you could take Kinetic. Maybe we'll put Kinetic on the bottom. But you could use your finger here, right on top of, what's this called? Diatonic. You could change your mind if you start it with the matte on your lid. The metallics stick pretty well if you decide to go that route. If you want to apply more primer, you can, but I think you'll be okay with layering them as such. This time, however, I am going to skip out. I want to go in with Tungsten here and use that as our lower lash line color. So we're hopping around a lot more than we did in our second demo when I stuck strictly to the top row. But I think you can start seeing that these colors play well together. I think if you spend time experimenting and figuring out what the best combinations are for you, then most definitely. I'm taking Manganese here and I'm using this shade as this eye's lower lash line color of choice. And I was toying with the fact of, or rather with, placing Kinetic somewhere. I thought maybe it'll be quite interesting to place Kinetic on the center of this lower lash line, especially when layered over Tungsten. I think it's a nice pop of color, but not too much if you wanted to take that more blue Triochrome look route. I'm sticking with Andradite actually as this inner corner highlight. I think it pairs very well with Ion that we have here on the inner part of the lid. And why not take Scarab as our inner lower lash line color of choice? I'm definitely, we're combining some colors here, okay? And for this eye, I'll go back into Vertex. We have not visited that shade since our first demo, and it's not as flashy as the other shades here, but why not? You, again, definitely can use a matte color for your highlight moments. I'm actually thinking, because I have Plutonic here as like a inner part of the eye fluff, but I don't want it to be the dedicated highlight. So going into Redox and tapping that right over not only Vertex, but some over Plutonium. Much better. I like that. Last round is done. Let's get these lashes on and I'll be right back. And we have the final round here for our Triochrome 6 look tutorial. This went all right. I think when I edit this footage, I will like my looks better because right now maybe the glam core is washing out the colors a little bit for me and I'm not as impressed with my work right now. I do, however, enjoyed using this palette. I think it's a nice escape from the usual colorful stories that we have from Natasha Denona, but different from the Bibas of the world. And to have more muted colors that are still bright, that are still not your typical like turquoise teal, a hot pink, or hot royal purple, that lives within those realms, but I think a lot more accessible again in nature and more fun to just experiment layering and putting together. In fact, the only colors that I would probably pause in combining recklessly will be scrap because it's olive. Maybe we'll have to be careful. Otherwise, the more medium lighter shades, you can definitely be more experimental, and I think find yourself successful in creating like a color blocked watercolor type of an eye. Same thing goes with the metallics in here. Again, as I had explained before, not the most powerful Triochromes we've ever seen, but I think that serves a purpose, not being as intimidating, easy to just slap on the lid, and then to pair with any of the mattes in here to blur the edges, slap on some mascara or eyelashes and you're done. Actually, this has inspired me to bring this palette over the weekend as I am babysitting a new dog. You're gonna see Cleo on the Instagram stories, just you wait. Just to force myself in, listen, if this is the only palette I had and I had it just for these days, what would I do? And that's the only way to truly allow your creativity to unfold, when you are given, or you give yourself these boundaries. Not bringing any other eyeshadow except this. When the pressure's on, that's when the genius starts to blossom, okay? So I'll keep you updated on that follow-up when I bring this with me over the weekend. But I think this was a more or less successful tutorial. Let me know down below otherwise. Also, let me know how the looks turned out, whether you followed what I did in this video or you kind of steered in your own direction. I would love to know down below. I'll see you in those comments, fam. And until then, that is a wrap. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this video helped. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and maybe consider subscribing to my channel. And until then, I will see you in here again with another 6-look tutorial, anime get ready with me, or monthly faves. Take care, and I will see you again soon.